Let's get joined up. Today's show is brought to you by Audible, and right now you can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/joined up. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. So thanks for tuning in to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, a regular show about all things writing, including interviews with authors, screenwriters, and key figures from the publishing industry. Plus, loads of hints and tips and inspiration for all kinds of creatives. You can follow us on Twitter at JU Podcast, leave a quick iTunes review, or just tell a friend. Right, cue the cheesy theme tune.
Put down your pen and stop your typing. Grab yourself a drink, 'cause it's Joined Up Writing.
Hello and welcome to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, where a little procrastination can go a long way. I don't know, I'm running out of ways to say that. Anyway, I'm Wayne Kelly and it's episode 97 with Merle Nygate, TV screenwriter turned novelist, talking about her debut espionage novel, The Righteous Spy. Merle's got loads to say about research, structure and the most common error of first-time novelists. Before that, a quick catch-up from me, which really will be a quick catch-up because I've been slacking on the productivity front. Well, at least on the writing side of things. So my day job's been really busy, with us working towards what will be our first production for broadcast TV, a short film for the BBC based on our longer documentary No Fair. It's due to air on UK TV on February the 11th, and it'll mark a big milestone for me and my colleague Matt Holt. Matt and I have been also having fun following the release of Stan and Ollie, the new Steve Coogan, John C. Reilly film about Laurel and Hardy. You'll know from last week's interview with Stan and Ollie screenwriter Jeff Pope that I'm a big Laurel and Hardy fan, and we've been lucky enough to film on the red carpet of the BFI world premiere of the film back in October, where we interviewed the cast and crew, and then last week we got to see a special preview of the film in Glasgow. I cannot recommend it enough, but I also found it inspiring from a writing perspective. It's a great example of how to build believable, well-rounded characters, especially when it could have so easily have collapsed into one-dimensional sort of caricatures. It's also instructive from a structural point of view, and it's full of sparkling dialogue. So if you're looking for something to pull you out of your post-Christmas slump, get yourself to the cinema and see the film. And if you haven't done so already, be sure to listen to my bonus interview with Jeff from last week's episode. Right, let's get on to today's interview with Merle Nygate. So Merle is a screenwriter, script editor, screenwriting lecturer and novelist. She's worked on BAFTA-winning TV, New York Festival audio drama and written original sitcoms. She previously worked for the BBC Comedy Commissioning, as well as writing and script editing across multiple genres. Merle's now released her first espionage novel, The Righteous Spy, which won the Little Brown UAE Crime Fiction Award and is available right now, published by Verve Books. We recorded this chat back in December and I think you'll find it really interesting. Okay, Mel, thanks so much for joining us on Joined Up Writing Podcast. I really appreciate it. So how's things, and why don't you tell me a little bit about The Righteous Spy?
Thank you, Wayne. I'm really happy to be here and delighted to talk to you about the book and I'm writing. The Righteous Spy is a novel about Mossad, which is the Israeli intelligence service, and it's about an operation in the UK.
Yeah, and tell us a little bit about, so it's sort of told from the perspective of three different characters, isn't it? And how much can you tell us without giving away too much, obviously?
Well, that's going to be quite tricky, but without giving away the twists and turns. Yeah. But one of the main things, what they are doing is they are going to stop a terrorist attack in the UK. And the most effective way of stopping a terrorist attack is running terrorists themselves.
That's right. So it's a bit of there's a kind of doubles and triples and quadruple bluffs going on.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's so the three perspectives are the would-be terrorist, whose name is Sahar, who is a young woman of 27, and the Israeli intelligence officer who is running the operation, who's the lead, and also a British woman who is drafted in to assist.
Well, I'm just over halfway through at the moment. I'm on Kindle, so I'm like 55%, so I can tell you that, and I'm absolutely loving it. It's really, really, really fast-paced, and as you say, there's lots of twists and turns, and it's kind of very kind of fast-paced espionage thriller, spy thriller is kind of how you're billing it, isn't it?
Yes, it is a spy thriller. It's interesting you say you consider it to be fast-paced, because it's not a novel with people jet skiing down the Thames or helicoptering, down ski slopes. What my intention was to try to make it seem as realistic as possible. So I wanted it to be convincing. So there are car chases and bad things happen, and I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end, because that is exciting. Yeah. But there's a lot about the relationships between the characters and how espionage works. It's novels, so I don't want to say in real life, but it's about the process of gathering information and covert operations.
Yeah, well, it feels very real to me. I mean, obviously, as a layperson, very much so, but it does feel like it's well researched, and there's tension. There is tension throughout, so I think that's great. So in terms of the actual research and getting that kind of plausibility side of things, I appreciate sometimes has to be some poetic license with some of these things. But how did you go about researching this?
Well, I started off reading a lot of spy fiction, and that actually wasn't terribly helpful, because everything I was developing, all the ideas were derivative. So I was doing like a Mole story, like a John le Carré, Taylor, and then I did a I Am Pilgrim story about a disaster happens, and they were all as things were before. And then in desperation, and it was in desperation, I went onto the CIA website, and I came across a review, or one of the books that I read was for something called Gideon's Spies. Right. Which was quite a long book. It was published in 2012, so it wasn't too old. And it had a lot of, it's a non-fiction book. It was about Mossad, and I went through the book and I put lots of coloured stickers in the book, and then I basically wrote a synopsis or transcribed all the different types of covert actions and operations that they have, how it was all structured. And I lifted, a lot of the book is based on research from that nonfiction book. And then from there, I started building up my library of nonfiction spy books. And I was working on the assumption that a espionage agency is a bit like a shoe shop, okay? You go to any shoe shop around the world, and I've been to a few shoe shops around the world, and there's a shop window where you see the shoes. You go in, the shoes are on display, and you try them on, and in the back there's storage. So I was thinking, okay, I believe that most espionage organizations are run in the same way. So as I said, I was reading, I've read an awful lot. I read that you could do national intelligence studies, you could do courses in it. So I've read a lot of non-fiction and a lot of international, stuff about international studies and politics, just to sort of, as I said, my goal was to make it convincing.
Yeah, well, you've succeeded. It's as I say, it's kind of really it does hold you. So that congratulations on that. So
Thank you.
So why in particular that the spy genre, the espionage genre? What was it that drove you? Because it from the sounds of it, as you say, you were really driven to write in that particular genre.
I wanted to have a go. I mean, I'm a great fan of John le Carré and Len Dayton, and latterly Charles Cumming and Mick Herron. And I just thought I have written a lot in the past. I've written in all sorts of genres, from sitcom to children's television to historical factual drama. And I thought I'd like to see if I could do it.
Yeah, well, it's great. I mean, to me, and I mean this as a compliment. I mean, I do like John le Carré, but I mean it's more Len Deighton than John le Carré to me, because it's kind of got that. It's kind of very direct, as I say. It kind of, it moves, moves at pace, and but it kind of has got that believability about it. So I really liked that. So you mentioned you kind of hinted some of the other writing and a little bit about your background. So let's go all the way back.
My God.
Cast your mind back. I'm sure it's not that long ago. So cast your mind back to, tell me a little bit about your background. So, where were you brought up, and why, how did you come to writing?
I always wanted to write. So I think most writers are the same. And I think most writers start writing very, very young, and they read very, very young. Mm-hmm. And I was always interested in writing. And I wasn't very good at school, but I was very good at the sort of composition-y kind of things that we got to do. And I have a memory of writing a composition when I was at, I think I was about 10 or so, and the teacher read it out to the class. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't one of the clever ones in the class. I was like an average one. And the teacher read it out really, really well, and everybody was gripped and they were laughing at the right places. And I thought to myself, okay, this is something I could do. Mm-hmm. So, but I didn't come to it till much later, although I wrote the odd articles here and there when I was like 18, 19. I wrote some articles, and I've always written short stories, journals, poetry. God help us, we all write poetry when we're about 18, don't we?
Yeah, it's good to get it out, isn't it? I wrote songs. Exactly. It's similar sort of thing.
Right, okay, exactly.
Moping
Same
and moaning
thing.
About things.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So I did all that stuff. And then I obviously travelled, and I took photographs, and I did research, picture research, and then I was working in PR, which was the first time I'd actually been paid to write anything. Mm-hmm. And then I was walking around one day, and I was thinking, God, I really don't like working in PR, and I really don't like my job, and I'd gone to the optician, and I thought, God, what can I do to drag, how can I drag out another half an hour?
You clock watching.
Before I had to go back to the office. And I wandered into a bookshop, and I was, looking at the books, and I had a sort of moment when I thought, okay, you either do it now or forget about it. Yeah. Okay, you either give it a go, right, and really sort of like write the novel, or you just like stop wondering whether you could actually do it. So I went to the library, got a book about how to write a novel, read the book, and that was my first attempt at writing a novel.
Mm-hmm. And what was that? Do you remember that novel?
It's somewhere buried away. It wasn't very good. Like most people, it wasn't very good, but it got me an agent, and it was a comedy novel. It was a sort of heisty kind of a thing, and the agent said if I wanted to write comedy, I should write TV sitcom, which is actually how I got into writing sitcom. Right. So I studied sitcom, and I did an MA in screenwriting and research, and as I said, I did a lot of sitcoms, and as I said, so I have done quite a bit of TV and
so you kind of got sidetracked. So it kind of started out, you were thinking novel. You wrote that first novel, obviously, and you got an agent, and then you kind of went off on this other little adventure for a time.
Big adventure, exactly. So, but writing TV has been actually very good, and script editing TV. I worked for the BBC for 5 years and I worked for comedy commissioning, which was a fantastic job because it meant I had to read a lot of scripts, and I had to do the analysis on the scripts and say why they're working and why they're not working. And that was, it's just very useful reading other people's work and
critiquing,
well, exactly. And so and also I think when you do TV, you get a real sense of structure, which is very helpful for any narrative.
And what do you think, if you go back to that first novel again, what do you think you learnt? Did you feel like you learned something? Because most people you kind of learn, as you say, some people 2, 3, 4, however many novels it is before the first one gets published. What do you think you learned from that first novel?
I think that, there is a problem. I mean, I do it myself in that novel, and it's something that so many writers do, and as I said, I do it myself, and there was a lack of agency in the central character. So that central character was just sort of, wandering along, things happened to them, and she was reactive, and then other things happened to her, and she was reactive and the whole way through. And that is the core problem of that novel. And as I said, I mean, I also have lectured in screenwriting, and I mean, 90% of scripts or narratives that don't work are because of this problem with, in novels they call it agency, and in screenplays they call it motivation, lack of that. And I think that if writers, and myself, because I can't tell you how many times I've made the same mistake, if you do that, or when I do that, then it solves so many problems. So in The Righteous Spy, same problem. So I had to give, I'm not giving anything away, Ellie a clear motivation, which is the reason why he's involved in the operation, is because he wants a promotion.
So that's his goal, and that's what he's trying to say.
That's his goal. Yeah. That's what he's working towards, exactly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think probably part of it comes from the fact that, especially if you're writing a novel and you're thinking you've got this, long project ahead of you, whether it's 70, 80, 90,000 words beyond, or whatever it is, and you think, well, I need things to happen, I need stuff to happen, I need plot. And whilst you do need plot, if it's going to be something that's going to be interesting, sometimes you need to go back, don't you, and think about, well, how can the characters drive that plot?
Yep.
And take it in different directions.
Yeah, but they have to be, they have to be the drivers. And it's a mindset thing that I don't know why it's so difficult. I mean, maybe because in our lives that we tend to be more reactive than, have agency ourselves.
That's probably a good point, actually, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe, I mean, sometimes I get a bit philosophical. That's one of the functions of drama, is to show us that we do have to, be motivated and have clear goals and, and work towards things. But it is it is something that I see it in my own work, and I see it in other people's work.
Yeah, and it definitely has an effect on it. So was The Righteous Spy, was that the second novel that you tried to write, or was that a bit further down? Okay, yeah. No, it often isn't. Almost everybody that I speak to, it's not usually the first or second novel.
No, it's about the fifth, I think.
Yeah. So did you, in terms of so you started off with comedy. I mean, so what was your second novel about? Was that same genre or different?
It was the sequel to the first novel, and that's never gone anywhere. And by the time the first one sunk without a trace, it was another heist story. I mean, I love heists.
Yeah,
and
I'm
too. Drawn to them. Yeah.
Well, they're great, aren't they? Because you're talking about agency and stuff. I mean, the thing about heists is you've got a clear, a set goal right from the beginning. There's usually a time frame with it as well.
Yes, and it's exciting, and it's an adventure, and there's people running around, and it was, so, I mean, I do have leanings towards heist stories.
So we can probably expect another one of those in the future, do you think?
No, probably not. Well, I don't know. Who knows?
Never say never, Mel. Never say never.
But what I found with The Righteous Spy, and one of the things I learnt and it's about authorial voice. And in TV scripts or films, we talk about tone, and I think that in novels we talk about authorial voice. And one of the things, my default is to be sort of mildly humorous, or slightly humorous. But I had to, because actually The Righteous Spy is a serious book, and so I had to be very clear about what the tone of it is. And one of the things about which Le Carre does brilliantly is, if there is a scene in I don't know if you know The Spy Who Came In From the Cold,
yeah.
but everything is dark, it's dark, it's down, it's sort of it's raining, it's grey, and that adds to the whole mood of the piece.
Yeah.
So I was very conscious with this novel that I couldn't have people skipping around having fun, because it is, to get the tone right.
But you've still got, there is still wit in there in terms of the way and banter, and obviously some characters.
Humour. Yeah, no, there is
characters
humour.
are more serious than others. And in terms of the perspective, so you, as we mentioned, you kind of got three main characters, and you've essentially got sort of two lots of third person, and then you've thrown in some first person in there.
Yeah.
Was that something that just kind of happened? Did that feel natural, or was that a conscious decision when you started writing? How did that come about?
I wrote the first person first, and that felt like a very intimate voice for a character that was actually quite difficult to write. And I couldn't have written the entire book from that character's point of view. It would have been, for me, much too difficult. And also, I mean, in terms of plotting, it would have been impossible. Yeah. So that's why I switched to close third for the other two. And I also, that first person narrative is actually her journal, as it will transpire.
Yeah.
And I'm not giving anything away here.
No, I forgot that. Yeah, I have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's quite significant. And I said I wanted that I wanted to have the intimacy of that character. As I said, which is why it was first person.
And when it came to, so you mentioned that you wrote the first person first. In general terms, how did you approach the plotting and outlining of this novel, or was it just a case of, if you've got a vague idea, let's just go for it?
No, I'm not that person. I am so not that person. Okay, I am the person who, when I get the package from IKEA, I take everything out carefully. I
sure
put them in the order.
Pieces, yeah.
Exactly. I am that person, and I read manuals. Okay.
Right, that's good.
So, I suppose because when I initially started writing, I found structure really, really difficult. And so I've learned how to structure a narrative over the years. I do it in a certain way, and it's quite. What I do is I take a big sheet of A2 paper. And 3-act structure, and I actually do a diagram, and I brainstorm it with pencil on my lovely cartridge paper, and just to make sure I have got enough things going on, because I find that if I don't do it that way, what generally happens is you have a very long beginning where you're setting everything up and you're making, going on and on about the characterization, and then the middle is a muddle, and then you try and wrap up everything too quickly at the end. So I'm a bit of a sort of structural Nazi, I'd say. I do plan quite carefully.
But again, do you think that comes from the TV and the script writing?
Yes, no question about it.
I mean, that's old structure, isn't it? Screenplay.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've done. I did a lovely a children's it was a puppet show, and they were 10-minute programs, and that was structured. Even to the point of thinking, okay, it's 10 minutes. I have to, in the first, quarter, I have to set the characters up on whatever the problem is, and then I have to develop the problem and have the, resolution. So you do learn that, certain things have to go on certain pages, to keep everything going. And you also learn that you have to have a certain number of events, and in a screenplay you call them beats, to engage, the audience. So if you have too many beats, it's too fast. And if you don't have enough, it's like that's when you're looking at something or reading something and nothing's happened. Then you get bored. So there is, structuring a narrative is mechanical.
Yeah, and that's just how you kind of have to approach it. That's how you think about it.
Yeah, yes, yeah. And then, things like the psychology and the characterization, that's something, and the theme of the piece is something, and also, hopefully, the interesting way you tell the story in terms of the language that you use and the images that you, create. that's something quite different.
Yeah. And do you find that you tend to layer those things on sort of afterwards, after the first draft, or is that something that's kind of, again, up front in your mind at the beginning?
No, that was up front as well. So what I mean, I suppose, say for example that the structure is like the frame of a building.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, once you've got that in place, then you can, you know, paint it in different colours, but you know what your final vision is going to be. So as you're building it, you know it's going to be, with X feet high, or you know that there's going to be these various colour schemes, or how it's going to fit into the landscape.
Yeah. And so, I mean, in general terms, what would you say is the favourite? But so talk us a little bit through your process. So you kind of you've told us how you outline and how structure is really important. And then once you've kind of got that, do you kind of go, well, I'm going to start? Are you one of these people that you literally start writing from the beginning, or do you pick a scene later on in the book that you think I'm going to focus on? Obviously, with this,
well, that's an interesting question. I have in the past written the end first.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't in this case. I knew, and the end did change a couple of times, so I knew that there was going to be quite a sort of climactic, there is a big set piece at the end.
Mm-hmm. And so you were kind of working towards that, but you didn't exactly know what it was, probably.
Yeah, I didn't exactly. That did change during the development of the book. So the first draft will be, I will write that as quickly as possible, and just to get it down.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still okay. So once I've got my great big piece of paper, what I do is I write an outline which is in proportion.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like really terribly boring. But what I do is I write the second act first.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to write. I'm
because
writing.
That's kind of the biggest chunk, sort of thing.
Yeah, and also it's the one where everything can go horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm. The model, as you called it.
And then, if it might outline the Act 2 is 4 pages,
mm-hmm.
then I know that Act 1 is going to be 2 pages and Act 3 is going to be 2 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's in proportion at that stage, it will be in proportion the whole way through.
That's that's a really good way to look at it. I mean, I really wish that I could be more like that. I mean, every time that I
have you tried?
Yes and no. But then I have. But then there's a little voice that says, "Yeah, but Wayne, have you really fully committed to it?" I mean, because I haven't got your background, but I come from writing scripts and things for work, but not so much for TV or whatever. But I've read lots and lots and lots of stuff, and I know that, as you say, structure is so important. In talking about where things kind of go. Yeah. So I kind of have an instinctual kind of idea of the shape, and I can sort of feel as I'm, particularly when I do the first edit. I mean, what tends to happen is I get a really, really messy, horrible first draft where I tend to go down loads and loads of cul-de-sacs where, I'll kill a character. I mean, the book that I've just finished sort of the final revisions on now, I literally killed a character in my first draft, and then by the time I got to the end of the first draft, realised that was a massive mistake and had to bring them back to life. And this is the kind of thing I do because I don't plan properly and I don't outline. Yeah. I've got a vague idea of. I've got an insight and incident, and I sort of know pretty much what's going to happen at the end. Although, like you, that sort of changed a little bit. The details of it, I kind of had a sense of what was going to happen, but the actual specific details changed of it. But I just think I'm just too impatient. It's like that. So I've started on the follow-up now, and again, as I was finishing the final edits of the previous book, right, next time I'm gonna, and I just watched a masterclass with is it James Patterson?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I haven't actually read any James Patterson books, but he was on. He had a masterclass. So I thought, well, I'll watch it. It's not I've not read any of his books or anything. And as part of that, he talks about his outlining process, and he's actually got on as part of the class notes or whatever. You get one of his outlines for one of his books.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. And they tend to be sort of half a page. It's in chapters, and each chapter is sort of half a page. of single space stuff, and he just says, well, this is what happens. They're relatively short chapters. Anyway.
Yes, yeah.
And I thought, when I was watching this, I was thinking, that would make my life so much easier. If I could do that, I've essentially written all the story. Then when I sit down to actually write, and go, well, this is the chapter that I'm going to do today, or whatever it is, I'm going to sit down and I can just write that and concentrate on that. But I don't know what it is. But when I start writing a scene, especially early on in a book, when I'm sort of finding the characters or deciding, exactly what they are, and the way that I usually do that, which is why I think I probably, as much as anything else, I'm probably more suited to scripts, is I write a lot of dialogue, and I find that that's where I discover my characters through my dialogue.
Yeah.
The way that they talk is often, that's how I find out who they are, and it's not something I have to think about a lot. Once I start doing a conversation and some dialogue, I tend to find, it just kind of flows.
You can do that before you get onto the piece itself.
You can, yeah, that's right.
Because in the past, and I used to do a thing. Okay, so say you have a commission to write a script, okay, and the first thing they say to you is, and they're not as kind as people in publishing, okay?
No,
so that you get the
more
gig.
Direct, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know what it's going to be, and they say, okay, what's your availability? When can you deliver? And you say, I can do this really quickly, no problem. And then you go home and you think, Christ, I've got to write this thing. Okay, how am I going to do it? And there isn't time to find the character within the script itself. So you have to, the way I've done it is separate it. And I thought, okay, well, I've got these various characters. And I used to do this exercise where it's great. You get a kitchen timer, 20 minutes, stream of consciousness, and you interview that character. And it's one of the most fascinating exercises that you can do, because you get their voice and you find out who they are.
It just flows. I did do something.
It's weird. It's and so I mean, and it when you have that deadline of knowing, okay, I've got to deliver this script in like 4 weeks, and I don't know who these characters are, then that's when one uses these tools, because you don't have the luxury of just finding them.
No, you're right. I mean, I actually use that for one of the antagonists in the novel that I just finished, for the same reason. I kept losing their voice. Although my novel is in first person and it's through the eyes of the protagonist, the antagonist, when I found that a lot of the time their actual voice, when they were in dialogue particularly, was a little bit all over the place sometimes. Yeah. And I thought, hang on, you don't really know who this person is, and so I did a similar thing. I just started writing a stream of consciousness and saying, well, this happened to me and that happened and da, da, da. And it's like acting, really. I think it's it's riffing on the character and
exactly. And then you find like some really interesting core thing about the character, and you don't know where it came from, but it's incredibly useful.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, that's why they're like that. Oh, that's because that thing happened to them. It's strange, sort of. It's imagination, I guess, but it's just the way that it happens. Sometimes it does almost feel sort of supernatural almost.
It does. I know it's spooky.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. So what would you say your favourite part of the whole process is? Is it the outlining? Is it the drafting? Is it the editing? Is it the revising? What's your favourite part?
I think that when you're in it, and you have like a really good writing day, it's incredibly exciting. It's a real rush. When you can really see it, and you can really, when you're not, you get into the flow. And the beginning of a project is always, I find it very difficult. And I always think it's a bit like a rusty tap, and you've got to really sort of like get a spanner and to try and open it, and then horribly nasty bits of rust water come out. But if you keep going at it every day, I'm not saying it like really rushes out, but it does come, and that's very thrilling. And as I said, I find that very exciting.
It really is, yeah. So what about so in terms of The Righteous Spy, give us a bit of an idea of your journey to publication, because I think you won was it Little Brown Crime
Yes,
Fiction Award?
yeah.
Tell us about that.
Well, I did I won it. I did an MA at University of East Anglia, which is an MA in crime fiction, and the prize, the Little Brown Prize, was at the end of the second year, and it was a big surprise that I won it. And then it was actually sort of quite quick, because after it was in the bookseller, I was contacted by publishers and agents and scouts, and so then the agent who I'm with now, John Ennick at United Agents, he contacted me and read it, liked it, developed it, and as I said, then the road to publication was, Verve. They were very. They really wanted to do it. They wanted to have a spy book. They wanted it to be their lead title on the new imprint. So that was it.
Exciting. And so how did that feel when that sort of started to kick off, and you sort of, because as you said, it came as a bit of a surprise to win the award, and then to kick on from there. Tell me how that felt.
Well, what I loved about it was quite quick, because I've got friends who get the gig and then they're not going to be published for like a year and a half or 2 years. So what was lovely was it was really fast, and we had the conversation in July last year, and then it was published in October.
Brilliant. It's excellent. And how are you finding life as a published author now?
Yes, all right.
Don't go mad, Mel.
One of the funniest, weirdest, strangest things was, because there's a print run, was people have asked me to sign the book, and I don't know what to put in it, but I mean, it's fun.
And is that something that you've solved now? Is that a conundrum that you've...
Well, I just sort of, I don't know whether I should put my full name or anyway. As I said,
you need to put something a bit espionage. You need to,
exactly.
You need to come up with some kind of code phrase.
Book after you've read it or something.
Or put something they won't understand. Tell them it's code, and they've got to go away and work it out.
That's what I did. I love it. Okay, I'll do that. Okay, I'll do that.
The birds only fly in summer. I don't know. Something.
Yes,
just something.
Exactly.
Who is Sweetbait? Something. Something
yes,
like that.
Yeah.
Spy aficionados, they love all that kind of stuff anyway.
Well, yeah, no, and they're very discerning, and they're very, spy people who read spy fiction read a lot of spy fiction, but I mean, it's like any genre.
Yeah, absolutely. They're kind of, they're really excited about it. So what have you got coming up next? Are you doing something in the same genre? What are you working on now?
Yes, no, I am. I mean, I don't want to talk about it too much, because if I talk about it, then it's still that sort of that
you break
exactly.
The spell.
Yeah. I have to tell the story to myself before I can tell it to anybody else. But yes, I am.
And it's in the same genre? Can you tell us that?
It is in the same genre.
Is it
yes.
a follow up or?
I don't want to talk. I don't want to say anything about it exactly for the minute, but it has a very exciting beginning.
Okay, I just wanted to take a quick break there to remind you to pop over to joinedupwriting.co.uk to join our free newsletter. It takes seconds, and I only need your first name and email address so that I can keep you up to date with podcast releases, but also let you know about other exclusive content, upcoming live Q&A sessions, and to send you some free stuff like the motivational 10 tips to survive Nano, the first draft and beyond, and a 3-act structure template, which, if you've been paying attention to Mel's interview, could be very helpful when plotting your novel or during the structural editing phase. So that's over at joinedupwriting.co.uk, and it's completely free to get fully engaged and joined up with the show. Right, let's get back to my chat with Merle, where I asked her to give me her best and worst writing advice. I've started asking people this of lately, because I used to just say I'll give a bit of advice to writers or whatever. What would you say is the best piece of writing advice that you've been given, and what's the worst?
Ooh, I love that question. I think, gosh. I think the best advice I would, because I'm slightly changing this, give to anybody who's writing, is to think about the theme of the piece. by that, basically why you're writing it, what's so important to you about the story. And in The Righteous Spy, for example, I'm writing about the fact that there are all these people who are doing terrible things, but they're basically okay people. So it's about good people doing bad things. So I'd say if you know what the theme is, then when you are writing your story or book or script and you don't know where it's going, you're getting a bit lost, if you can come back to what the core idea is, then it's a bit like having a torch in the darkness.
It can pull you back in the right direction.
It can. And also the thing about the theme, it gives you your ending. So it tells you how the piece ends. So that's the best advice I could give, or anybody had. Actually, I'll tell you, no, the best advice that was given to me by an agent was actually going to do my first MA in screenwriting. So I as a writer, benefit from studying because, remember, I am a manual girl.
Yeah. You want to know how it's done, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So my first, creative writing groups and writers groups, I find that incredibly helpful. Worst piece of advice, oh my God.
It might be something that you read and you thought, well, that's just rubbish. It doesn't work for me, maybe.
Well, what doesn't work for me is just starting to write. And without knowing where I'm going. That's the equivalent for me of getting to the car and not knowing where I'm going. So that is very, very bad advice for me. And the other bit of bad advice for me is I stopping and starting. There is a type of writing where you write the first 20,000 and then you review it and rewrite it, and then do the next 20,000, then you review it and rewrite it. That really, really doesn't work for me.
That doesn't work for me either.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think as a writer, you have to find the process that it works for you.
I agree.
Because it's a unique, writing, creating. It's a unique experience, so you have to experiment and find out what works.
I agree, because not, as you say, not everything works the same for everybody. That's the whole thing.
Exactly.
I think that's why it's interesting. A lot of people, and I count myself as one of these people as well. Sometimes, you read. You slavishly read all these interviews and different things with authors and that you admire or whatever, and you're like, what, when do they write, or where do they write, or like it's like this magic formula that you can suddenly, if I do it like that, I'll be as good as them, or I'll be as productive, or whatever it is.
I read the Stephen King book on writing.
It gets mentioned almost every week. It's brilliant. Yeah, it's
a great book. It's a fantastic book, and at the end of the book, there's this exercise which he does, where you start with some sort of situation and you just start writing. And I did have a go. I have to say, I gave it a go. And it was, and I did get something out of it. And it was actually quite a visceral piece that I wrote. And I'm, really, and it was actually, interestingly
because you didn't
enough,
stop to analyze it. Yeah,
exactly. I didn't think about it, and it was horror, and it was different. But I couldn't write it. I mean, I wrote a short story, which is fine, 5,000 words, okay. But I could not write an entire, either a novel or a
novella or something.
Yeah, or a script like that. It just wouldn't work.
No, I definitely don't. I mean, that's the thing for me. I definitely don't think I could write a script that way, because I just think you really do need to know the structure. Because I think of a script more in like building blocks.
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't think of a novel in the same way, really, but I just don't. I think it just seems to be. I mean, I'm not saying that I won't change the way that I do things, but there's just something about it. It's almost like, I hate the phrase because it's overused at the moment, but this idea of going on a journey, it does seem to be like that. I often find that the first thing that I come up with in the first draft, or at least in parts of the first draft as regards the plot sometimes, especially in certain places, with hindsight, it's like, well, that's actually quite predictable, or that was a little bit too easy. That's another thing that I've been guilty. I don't know whether you're guilty of that sometimes. Yeah. Where you have you set yourself a problem up, and the protagonist just solves it on the first go, pretty much.
Yes, I know, and you don't. Yeah, I know you don't make them work for it.
And you're
no,
like,
you've got to
you
make
know,
them
no,
really
let's
suffer.
complicate it again, and then complicate.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether you. I've been watching Ozark on Netflix. I don't know whether you've seen that.
No, is that
I
good?
recommend it. It's brilliant.
Okay.
But it really is. It's a perfect example of this idea of sticking your protagonist in a tree and throwing rocks at them.
Yes.
Because
yeah.
it's it's just one thing goes wrong, and then another thing goes wrong, and then another thing goes wrong, and it just keeps going on, and it's just constantly just throwing a different challenge at them, one thing after another, and sort of seeing. I mean, it's an amazing writing feat. I mean, obviously they've got a team of writers and they've got a writing room and they can bash through all these different ideas, but it does make it really is compelling because
really okay. I'll watch that.
It's really good. They just finished the second series. It's just got 2 series on there, and it's
I mean, TV's so amazing at the moment.
It's superb. It's really good. It really is good. I mean, you have to, when you watch it, you have to sort of stop yourself getting depressed, thinking, "Oh God, never write anything as good as this."
Oh, you could. I mean, I've worked. I mean, on a couple of projects. I've been in the writers' room, and that's very exciting experience because, and it's very, it's collaborative, and everybody is bouncing ideas off each other. And it's an exciting, it is an exciting experience. So, I suppose because, they're greater together than they would be individually.
I think that, and I think even when something's written, because obviously there are some great things that are written by a single writer. I appreciate the script edited and everything else, but, it's not a huge team of writers. But even those things, the thing that you forget, and someone else mentioned this a while ago, I think it was on another podcast that I was listening to, is sometimes you do get that sense. You watch something and you say, oh my God, how was this written? How was this created? It's just fantastic. But the thing with it was, at one stage it was a first draft, like everything is a first draft, and it was messy, and it was untidy, and there was holes in it.
Absolutely.
And, it wasn't as good, and things get better obviously with each revision. And
absolutely,
in TV or film or whatever, as you say, you've got a team of people looking at there. That you have a script editor, and then you've got a director that's putting their spin on it as well, and then you've got actors, and they bring something else to it. And hopefully by the time it gets to the final thing, if it's working properly, it's even if you've got to have something good to start off with, but it could be great. It's got because that collaborative process. Yeah,
exactly, but also presumably because everybody knows what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to say. And there was a interesting. I don't know if you've seen The Wire.
Yeah, it's my favourite.
Okay, so apparently David Simon said that they spent a lot of time in the writers' room saying, what are we saying here?
Yeah.
And if everybody is, knows what they're trying to say, then, it works.
Absolutely. And I mean, he was really obsessed with reality and the idea of, well, no, that just would not happen in real life, and it wouldn't work out that way, unfortunately, because most of the time, it doesn't end well in that show. But a lot of the time it's like, well, no, but in real life it doesn't work like that, and someone's not coming in to save the day or sort this thing out or whatever. And the reality is they're just going to continue the descent or whatever. And he was really keen to keep that. Oh yeah, but I love that show. I can.
I love that show as well.
yeah, it's brilliant. That's really, really good. So the book is out now, as you say. Where can people find out more about you as well?
There's. I have a website, and I am the only Merle Nygate in the world, so that's quite easy to find. I do a little bit on Twitter. I'm not very good at Twitter. And as I said, the book is available on Amazon.
Brilliant. Well, I'll put all those links in the show notes as well. But it's been really, really good talking to you, Mel.
Thank you.
No, it's been really good. And I'll make sure I put all the links to your show and the book, obviously, in the podcast. And I can't wait to finish the rest of the book. I mean, it's only because I'm such a sporadic reader in terms of when I actually get to sit in front of the Kindle. I would have read it, I think, by now. I started it last week, but I'm reading more every day, and it's a really, really good read. So I recommend it.
Great. Oh, I'm so pleased, Wayne. Thank you very, very much, and thanks for inviting me to talk, because it's always fun to talk about writing.
Okay, thanks again to Merle, and you can buy The Righteous Spy right now in all the usual places. Since I recorded Merle's interview, I've actually finished the novel and loved it. It's a real page-turner, and I did a full review on my blog over at waynekellyWrites.com. I'll put the link to that in the show notes, along with Merle's website and book links. Well, that pretty much wraps things up for another week, but don't forget you can find the entire back catalogue of interviews on the website. Make sure you subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Overcast, or wherever else you get your podcasts from, and then you can have the show downloaded automatically every week. Also, remember to take a few moments to leave me an iTunes rating and review. Be great if we get some of these other territories around the world. I know you're listening even, all around the world in all sorts of different diverse places. So get those reviews up there. It really makes a difference. It's one of the easiest things you can do to help other people find the show. Next time, I'll be talking to Hannah Jameson about her post-apocalyptic novel, The Last. Until then, thanks for listening. I'm Wayne Kelly. Happy writing and reading, and I'll see you next time.
Joined up right